Issue 68. First, I want to make a correction about my issue 67 review. Panders never tweeted that Scourge slept with Bunny. That was just a misconception from how the art was drawn, and his actual tweet was an apology for the misunderstanding. The story starts out with the most uncreative idea for a Sonic story next to fighting Badniks, because Sonic's gonna look for an emerald, which is exciting because it sounds like something important is gonna happen. But it's not like the heroes needed to put the world back together or something this time. But good on Tails for making a portable emerald radar. I guess he only recently made it, because otherwise, what took him so long to start doing this? Sonic calls Tails Buddy, and Tails flies using extreme gear, because apparently he thinks he needs that to keep up with Sonic when he's trying to go as fast as possible, when we all knew he could spin his tails to keep up with Sonic. Like he discovered when running after him for the first time in that cutscene SA1. Sonic boosts ahead of Tails, of course. And come to think of it, he never boosts in IDW. Even though it'd be really useful for him to boost through enemies in the first few issues and so on. So only when his pride is at stake does he do it. And Tails hears a noise and warns him to slow down, and thankfully actually does follow his advice for once. But I don't know why he's questioning his order, because he would have heard the rumble too. Sonic falls into a hole, but Sonic characters are immune to fall damage, remember Tangle? So of course he won't get hurt. Tails just assumes he doesn't have rings right now, so he goes down and grabs Sonic. Then his airboard malfunctions for no reason, even though he's supposed to be a genius. Just once I'd like it to go 10 issues without being pushed forwards by character incompetency. Then it'd be like how I expect Sonic to be. Come to think of it, it could have been explained that Kitsunami sabotaged his airboard. So that should have been explained to at the very least make him have a competent moment. Sonic can't get a foothold on the cliffs because it's slanted diagonally upwards, and he slides in an overly dark panel into the cave. He asks if Tails is okay, calling him Bud, and Tails at least says the data was sent to his workshop. Notice that he says the workshop, as if he only has one, when the comic kept insisting he had many workshops. I get why he'd want to be faster by not specifying which workshop, because he knows which one it is. I like that Tails feels confident calling dibs on deciding what's for dinner. It's convenient that Sonic lets him do that when he always ignores his advice. I thought Tails was unusually submissive in this comic. You need to do this way more often to fix his character, because it looks like this is the only thing he relents on. The Emerald's energy signature has gotten stronger, and Tails says they fall into holes all the time. I can't remember that. Tails guesses from seeing the pickaxe that whoever was working here left in a hurry. It humanizes Sonic that he's actually nervous. They see some plants growing underground, and the only light is coming from a glowing white river. So that looks magical. Why would the plants even start growing down here when there's normally no light unless a person planted them? Emeralds don't create plants, most of the time. I guess an emerald is making the river glow. I guess Sonic's only asking an animal a question as a joke because he knows he can't answer. And he sees an emerald. So what took so long for them to detect the emeralds? Rouge has a better emerald radar than the genius Tails made. That he took ridiculously long to make. I guess emerald radars are insanely hard to figure out making. I wish the writer wasn't too lazy to explain why they came close enough to the emerald for it to be detected in the first place, when normally it wouldn't be on the route for the week, or else they would have detected it way earlier, so they couldn't have detected it on the way to the grocery store. Why didn't they ask to borrow Rouge's emerald radar? A long time ago. There'd be no harm in her giving it up for a few minutes. Sonic talks to himself for quite a while, which is always cheesy. Out of nowhere, he gets scared by a giant monster with glowing white eyes, when usually we don't see giant monsters in random locations in the Sonic series. They have to be entire species, not just the occasional one for each location with a monster in it, or they wouldn't exist. This reminds me of Sonic Unleashed. I get to see Sonic fall to the rocky ground and see the impact. He kicks the monster, but it doesn't show the impact with it. Sonic tells Tails he could use his help, since it is a cramped space after all. Never mind he can still jump. So why isn't he homie attacking it a bunch? I know this writer played Sonic in the Secret Rings, because I've read all of her comments on her fan comic. So why does she keep forgetting he can homie attack him? Or do something else? Or spin dash him? How did Tails recognize this thing as a salamander specifically? It's too big, and I doubt there's any lizards of that color. Why don't they just call it a monster? Apparently in this world, that's what all salamanders are like. If only people used these things against Robotnik. Sonic gets swiped at by the tail, but we don't see the impact. Tails says he can't get close because his tail is scarier to him than Chaos 4. He says the salamander moves carefully. I guess this made him assume it was a robot, even though it could just be a smart animal. Tails fiddles with his tablet and then eventually throws his extreme gear, which is confusingly the same color scheme as his tablet, and Sonic lands on it to start flying away. By the way, why is he using his extreme gear now? The entire comic ignored those things for no reason. I shouldn't just have to assume that it was broken all this time and he was taking that long to fix it. He thanks Tails for the save, and Tails says that the more Sonic disturbs the environment, the angrier the creature gets, while it barely even notices Tails. Sonic once again tries to talk one of his enemies into friendship with him, when it's really not like him to do that with an animal. At least he says he doesn't know if it can understand him, so it's definitely confusing. He apologizes for bursting into his home and says that if the monster wants to keep the emerald, it can. But if they don't take it, eventually more people are gonna come looking for it and this place won't be safe. The monster makes a much better guardian of this thing than any of the heroes. None of the heroes would spend all of their time near it. I don't know why writers who love fan service didn't have Tails' pet teapup in IDW, because that could guard the emerald. If Eggman comes here, he'll be in a giant drilling machine that could collapse the cave on the monster. So Sonic should say this to make his argument convincing. The monster has no idea what he plans to do with the emerald. There's no apparent reason for why it wants it other than thinking it's pretty. And usually I wouldn't expect animals to care about how pretty an object is. So it makes sense that he wouldn't think they're gonna abuse the emerald's power if he doesn't think it can power a machine or do chaos control. The monster pushes a boulder to make it possible for them to leave this place. But it's annoying that Sonic's running theme of trying to talk his enemies out of it and leaving them to their own devices has to be rewarded here. So why is there an intelligent monster? Sonic thanks him, and all of a sudden it's sunset. Tails says what I'm thinking, that they were underground longer than he thought. Tails' intelligence is taken advantage of in a strong way for once, as he appreciates that the cave has a unique ecosystem that people can make discoveries in. Wait, why is he talking as if this is the only underground cave in the entire history of the planet? I mean, why is this so shocking and amazing to him? He agrees with them that they shouldn't let people know about the cave because that betray the monster. So why did he prioritize people studying this cave for the sake of a science field that he isn't even interested in over a person's well-being? Sonic lampshades that the monster is like Knuckles, making the story look less creative. He calls him little brother with his hand on his back, and Sonic ends the story using the extreme gear to fly over the terrain because it's slanting downhill. This shows why he does need the extreme gear. There wasn't even one panel last issue building up to them looking for an emerald, which would be nice since the heroes have ignored them for so long, and Eggman would abuse them. He can go super once he gets all 7, and that's just going to be used for a get out of jail free card to resolve the end of an arc, and then he'll lose them all. Fang the Hunter issue 1. I always thought it was weird that he suddenly got called Hunter instead of Sniper, but Sniper was weird too. At least it fit what he did. We never saw him go hunting, so it's just a lie for censorship. It starts with Sonic being spied on from a safe distance by Fang, with an entire page consisting of this with no plot progression. And I have to assume he's whispering because otherwise he should have heard Fang's voice and looked at him. No one sleeps that deep during the day. it wasn't necessary to have Bean embark with him right away when they're not in the name of the miniseries, which gave the impression that this was supposed to be Fang's solo adventure, at least for a while. And it doesn't help that I was reminded that there's no canon basis to them being a team in the games. There's no proof they were a team in Sonic the Fighters. So this is just being pushed because it's by an Archie writer, which I know for a fact is annoying to game purists. Which is weird because the whole appeal of this comic is supposed to be that it's about being like the games. And will I be okay with Bean showing up later in this thing? Because to contrast Fang, it makes him react to him, and Fang alone talking to himself would get boring. It would have been refreshing at this point to see Fang being alone for a while, or working with someone other than Bean for a few issues, as long as the plot had enough happening in it that it was interesting. But we don't even get one page of it. What would be the point of the miniseries existing if it was nothing but same old, same old? Artistically, I mean. Fang whistles, a boulder gets launched as a result, and it sends Sonic's hammock upwards, and he's just fine, and the boulder misses him as he yawns. What was Eggman's main enemy even doing sleeping outside in the open? Not even in a city where there'd be people around him to wake him up. There's a reason I never picture him doing that. Even Boom Sonic had the good sense to sleep indoors most of the time. Bean's impressed with Sonic, being interesting but mildly annoying, and it usually makes no sense because of the vague, he's crazy, when I doubt any specific mental disorder would make you like him, so I'd love to know which one it is. Sonic reacts casually to Bean not taking him seriously, which makes sense because he's fast enough to easily avoid it. Fang gets worried that his vehicle would get blown up. Again. At least this time he panics enough to push Bean and land next to a bomb. I say at least because it's new. Its explosion merely sends the two of them flying upwards without even being knocked out, so I'm forced to assume they had rings to sort of protect them. Sonic must be assuming that too, or he wouldn't be cheerful at seeing people get blown up. I think. After all, Sonic wasn't happy about thinking Eggman took a lethal fall in Lost World. His recklessness backfires on him because Bart grabbed him since he was standing still to mock people, and I get to see his head impact the ground. But he instantly spin dashes to get him over his head and spin him around for good measure and throw him. It looked cool and made sense. He talks condescendingly to them, and I have to put up with Bean's text being upside down to inconvenience the readers. At least it was someone who never has anything important to say. Sonic lampshades Eggman's laziness in not attacking him himself. I wonder if the writer thinks this is about Sad AM, because this is a legitimate complaint I've seen get made with that. Fang says he wasn't hired and was just trying to force him to tell him about the 8th Chaos Emerald. Sonic calls him out repeatedly that there is no 8th Emerald, and I'm wondering if this is an intentional reference to the 8th Emerald in Sonic the Fighters, or if the writer didn't know about it. There were also more than 7 emeralds in Sonic Spinball, which Sega said is canon recently, without clarifying that sometimes Sonic gathered the same emeralds he already gathered, and explaining how he ever lost them. The 8th Emerald in Fighters makes sense because the player gets cloned, so the emerald he has was cloned too. Sonic doesn't say that the 8th Emerald in Fighters vanished after he went super in a puff of cosmic logic, which is the only way I'm saying this after Fighters would make sense. Sonic should have known what they planned to do with an emerald. I like that Bean's giving out answers for what he'd do with money. Why didn't they already get a portable freezer? Oh yeah, it's doing the concept of characters other than the Chaotix wanting to be able to afford stuff. Flynn has said Sega told him there is no money in the Sonic universe, despite Team Sonic Racing having the Chaotix still be motivated by money, and IDW's previous issues being like that as well. Fans have taken this to mean the Chaotix are the exception. But with this panel, fans and the people skeptical of Flynn are going to take this 2 different ways. Fans will say that Sega's loosening up with their rule now, and critics will take it as proof that Sega didn't say there's no money. It said, you're not allowed to make Sonic and Tails be motivated by trying to get money. And Flynn might have at best misinterpreted this based on what story idea was turned down, and at worst just tried to make Sega look bad again. And yes, Sonic and Tails aren't greedy. But if it was explained that they wanted to donate to charity or buy food for the hungry with money, by all means they should want money. So I like that a representative of Sega said they take things on a case-by-case basis. Maybe Sega would have agreed in that case. To my understanding, he was told he can't make a story about them trying to get money for the rent. Fang wants money to upgrade his vehicle, which has a long name so I avoid saying it. Sonic complains because he hasn't napped enough yet. Again, this is like Boom and X-Sonic, but he started out his story in Sonic Adventure by napping outside. So unless that's not how Sega views Sonic anymore, that is like Game Sonic. It was just done more in the shows. And it's still not like classic Sonic. Finally, Fang lampshades as wasting his time here and decides to leave. Why is the focus now on Sonic's point of view in the Fang the Hunter comic? You'd expect a comic called that to always be from Fang's point of view. But apparently the writer of Sega had no faith in Fang to keep being compelling that long. When any character could be compelling if you had enough things happen to him throughout the story. This would be like if Sonic was one of the main characters of the Tangle and Whisper miniseries. I like seeing Sonic more than Fang because he's more interesting. For better or for worse. I'm just pointing it out. Eventually Tails warns Sonic that he's got trouble, and Sonic has to remind himself not to lose it with him. This isn't like Game Sonic at all, or regular IDW Sonic, but it's been clear from the beginning that classic IDW Sonic acts different. Why do his eyes morph when his eyes are closed when he still has skin-colored eyelids? It looks awful. Tails conveniently doesn't care about Sonic expressing resentment of him out loud, implying that he's had to get used to this. Tails tells him Marble Zone got attacked by a flying battleship. Sonic's response is relatable to me. It really doesn't matter that a place already in ruins with lava got put on fire and ruined some more. Archaeologists would beg to differ. It's common for people to say that old man-made structures in general should be preserved just because they're old, but none of them are always fiery. Still, Game Sonic wouldn't be apathetic to the idea of going after Eggman, for any reason. He would be interested in checking out what he's doing from curiosity to see if he's capturing the animals we know exist there. He doesn't act like he actually cares about the fact that he's doing that again. Which Tails didn't even say. He could just be assuming. It looks like he's only getting up because he wants to humor Tails. Which would only make sense if he thinks he wouldn't ever stop whining otherwise. Regular IDW Sonic almost never humors Tails, who consistently backs off after the second time he's dismissed by him. So this implies that this Tails has a spine with him. And no wonder if he had to get used to insults. He can get Sonic to the point of resenting him and not lose his friendship. No wonder he's braver with him. It's so ironic that this is better for him. Sonic saying Eggman's up to his usual nonsense would only make sense if he assumed he was capturing animals there despite not being told that anyways. He shouldn't even hesitate to get up then. He's supposed to care about saving people at least. His theme song says he's just living by his own feelings right before saying he won't give up or compromise, showing that the two are connected. And it says he'll never give up the fight. It means that he's fighting against evil because that's how he lives by his own feelings. Because he wants to fight Eggman. It doesn't say he won't do it if he's attacking a place that was already ruined and full of lava, when he really should be stopping him from making it to another base of his. To be fair, the theme song doesn't say that he'll always pick bothering Eggman over getting some rest if he needs it, because that'd make him look stupid. And in this issue he's not. Someone as excitable as Sonic wouldn't nap unless he made himself overtired. And they'd be stupid to put himself in danger when he's exhausted. But exhausted isn't the case here if he's still capable of fighting right now and remaining cheerful and witty while he's at it, with no hint of being tired. So he's had enough of a nap to get back in fighting shape. Why is he even considering not going after Eggman to continue a nap he doesn't need if he already knows Eggman's capturing animals? Instead of Tails just saying, Sonic, he should have been written to tell Sonic that Eggman can make a new base in Marble Zone, or at least use its materials to build dangerous things. Like missiles that he could fire at a city before anyone would get to stop him. That's why he should be concerned. And as far as we saw in the games, he never did that before with the place, so it would be believable for Sonic to have not considered that. Sonic shouldn't have been written to say he knows Eggman's up to his usual nonsense then. Since he can fight well and knows it, he'd be right to say that he knows he'll be able to smash whatever robot or mecha Eggman sends to him as a result of smashing up Marble Zone. Might as well let Eggman have fun building them. But even in the classic days, he still built the Death Egg for the purposes of threatening people other than Sonic. And it's not like Eggman to just have a place attacked for no reason. It'd have to be for his own benefit. Just to test out a new weapon would be good enough for reason. For all we know, he did that every single time, made a new thing that could kill Sonic. So it is usual. But why should that harmless testing cause Sonic to get himself involved? Eggman would do that anywhere no matter what. He can't get him to stop as a pacifist, so smashing his robots and yelling at him for this would be pointless. And it's not hurting anyone. So what if it causes fires? That's what firefighters are for, and he's not going to go there with a fire extinguisher. So there's nothing he can do about this. So it's pragmatic of him to not get involved. If by usual nonsense he's not referring to capturing animals. If Tails isn't, then it would be selfish for him to force him to stop napping so that he can waste his time going to yell at Eggman and smash badniks he can smash anytime. So it's fine if he puts it off for a few minutes for his own health. Because while every extra minute would be another where the family and friends of the kidnapped animals are missing them, Sonic can't survive by spending every single second of the day saving people. Though this argument only applies if 1. Sonic is still tired and was just forcing himself to act like he wasn't and can't do that for long. And 2. If Eggman has so many animals captured that to free them all in a row would require sleep deprivation. And I doubt it, because not only is Sonic just that fast, but in the game, Sonic goes somewhere if animals are getting captured in a place and badniks show up there. This implies the places you go through in the game in question are the only parts of the world with badniks at that time. And after Tails tells Sonic that the battleship vanished, Sonic acts excited like he's not tired at all, and runs off wanting to see a ghost battleship, which is a funny way of saying a battleship with a cloaking device, or the ability to chaos control warp away, both of which Eggman should be able to do. He can make anything. But after Unleashed, I could believe Sonic's just so tough that you wouldn't be able to tell if he still needed a nap. He still acted excited to see something cool anyways. That's what I have to go with so he doesn't look like a total asshole. Marble Zone has animals in it, so we'd have no reason to assume Eggman wasn't putting animals in danger by attacking it. And Tails did say there were witnesses to that. So the hero I know would never be reluctant to do whatever it takes to protect those animals, just because they could run away from the danger. Wanting to be a hero is one of his defining features, but this is making it look like he doesn't want to be a hero, at least not when he needs a nap. He wants to see cool stuff. It looks like the idea of seeing cool stuff makes him happier than the idea of saving animals from badniks and annoying Eggman. What he's all about. Even Archie and Fleetway Sonic aren't like this. Just have him be called out on it and I'd be able to forgive this as an interesting anti-hero reinterpretation. My problem is Flynn literally said his Sonic is the Sega standard, when he doesn't even get the classic Sonic right. And not making Sonic like the game Sonic isn't appealing to the fans that want it to be like the games, which is the whole appeal of the comic. Classic Sonic is written as more immature to indicate that he's younger. So it says nothing good that even with less experience with Eggman's deeds, he's still jaded at this point from seeing people get inconvenienced by Eggman too much that he no longer has a strong reaction when they are. Which is relatable, but not in character. Sonic's character bio says he hates injustice. He got mad at seeing animals get dropped in Lost World. He cared about the animals in the Sonic 1 manga. And Sonic's always been meant to be an inspirational paragon first and foremost. His being relatable came in with him being impatient and rude to his enemies. But that's where it ended. Anything else, like bullying a rival of his, would distract him from us revering him as a hero to aspire to be. Everyone has moments of impatience and being mad at their enemies. Bullying Antoine or selfish apathy like this crosses the line into him not being a hero while it's happening. You'd think Sega would care about its mascot being portrayed like this in something like the games. If Sonic was completely sleep-deprived, I get it. But we didn't find out what Sonic could have been doing to tire himself out enough to need a nap. And I have to assume he was fighting badniks. Sonic napping is the least interesting way to introduce him to the story. Having him running and explain that he likes exploring would tell us what Sonic does in his free time, to make it more believable. To go with the fact that he's a jerk to be relatable. Compassionate people wouldn't always find him relatable. Finally, the story goes back to Fang, who at least keeps it simple. I hate how Bean looks in the second panel. If Fang's an expert treasure hunter, that logically means he's gotten rich from all the treasure he got by now. So he's just doing this for fun. And even rich people can be greedy. And as for why they haven't already bought a portable freezer, Bark's teammates keep spending the money before he gets to buy one. As for why Fang hasn't spent it on already upgrading his vehicle, either he has a gambling problem or he did buy the upgrades only for them to get smashed by Sonic. Fang says he went after Sonic first because he's easier to get to than someone on a floating island. Once again, I see the Master Emerald shining for no reason, unlike in the games and early IDW. Fang lampshades Knuckles slacking on the jump. This would make sense if Knuckles was going to the bathroom or getting food or water. That would take a few minutes. So it would make the most sense if he waited a few minutes. Not assumed he was being completely unlike himself. But there's no proof that he didn't wait a few minutes. Bark silently suggests stealing the Master Emerald. So much for, according to Amy, he's good and just has bad friends. Fang says they've got other priorities than taking an unguarded, much more valuable jewel. What is he thinking? Just have Bark smash it and pick up the pieces. It would only take a few minutes and he's not in that much of a hurry to go get the rumored 8th emerald, which he must assume only recently got created or landed on the planet for it to make sense. Uncharacteristically, Bean says that he and Bark are getting tired of Fang's antics. Usually he doesn't have a brain. Bean says he's with Ham so he could have fun activities to do, but he doesn't need Fang to think about what to do for fun. That was foreshadowed in that he thought about playing a soccer ball on his own. Fang gets told that he's talked them into all sorts of wacky jobs, which he likes. So why does he say it's the principle of the matter? It's not like Bean, or at least Flynn Bean, to be opposed to doing something wacky, or risking his life. He thought being blown up was cool. I like that Fang looked smart by getting Eggman to reward them with gems in advance. It makes sense that with Sonic getting all the emeralds so many times, Eggman thought that for them he needed someone with treasure hunting experience. Something he didn't have and couldn't look up online to download into a robot. So he needed him too badly to risk him not helping him because he refused. Fang says that they got an emerald out of their last comic adventure. He's winning the argument here. He only loses when told that Amy ran after him with a hammer for pie theft. That would only not be worth it if she caught up to them. So he's only right because of something that happened off screen. Fang says that if his plan works, they'll get the most money they ever did. And that alone gets Bean to stick around with them, rendering his entire argument with him a pointless waste of my time. It made me complain about it for nothing. It turns out Knuckles was watching them from the bushes all along. It's not like him to hide from a potential Master Emerald thief. He'd stay in front of it. Then I see Fang at Mushroom Hill Zone, which he's never been to before. As much as I like seeing those mushrooms, the comic would have more of a point if he went to a new setting, giving me something new. Fang sees tracks, but I don't. He tells Bean to be quiet. Bean bounces, he gets trapped in vines, and Fang says he was following orders and being quiet, then asks where he went. I never had the impression that Fang didn't see what happened to him, because it'd be an extra punchline for Fang and Bark to have witnessed this. They would have, because bouncing off the mushrooms makes a noise, so he was not being quiet, functionally. He wanted him to be not quiet so that Knuckles wouldn't get alerted to them. So he would have looked at him when he was bouncing from the noise it made. Instead, he arbitrarily doesn't know where he is so he could tell Bark to split up. Either way, Bark would have been lured into a trap of Knuckles' and gotten blown by magic wind into prison. I'm glad to see Knuckles using a trap again. Then he notices from the tracks that Knuckles has been looking for him, and the story ends. So this is why he's being called a hunter. Not because he's literally a hunter like Elmer Fudd, which would justify being called that, but because they had to stretch the definition to him trying to hunt a person down. People try to look for people all the time, and that doesn't get them called hunters. So where's his gun? Why wouldn't it be strapped to his back? I would never imagine Fang to be stupid enough to go around without his gun and vehicle. So did it get completely ruined off screen? This intriguing issue by Evan Stanley was about Sonic and Tails somehow falling into a grotto because Tails' extreme gear somehow malfunctions despite him being a genius who's been perfecting it since Sonic Riders. And there's no reason that he would have the extreme gear anywhere that Kitsunami could access. He can't access his workshop. And despite them finding an emerald, it still felt like an insulting filler issue because it didn't continue off the previous issue like it really wanted. The concept of the underground monster protective of its home just rips off an episode of Sad AM. But I'm glad it's really a monster and not a robot for an unlikable character, because that's more unique for Sonic. It still feels very arbitrary that there's all of a sudden a monster guarding a place in the Sonic series, let alone an intelligent one. This isn't the world of Arabian Nights, this isn't the Unleashed adaptation, so it's hard to take this seriously because we never see monsters like this. It's not a salamander if it's that big. It's a believable twist that Sonic talked him out of it when it showed no indication of being able to understand English, because Tails figured out it was intelligent. And this is a magical world where anything magical can happen. I just can't help but be confused by it because it came out of nowhere. It's not a bad story to go through, but it's not what anyone wanted after the cliffhanger of last time. If Sonic was in character, he would have started homie attacking it, and then it'd be trapped down here if he couldn't push the boulder. This issue is by Ian Flynn, and was about Fang and his team getting bested by Sonic in a failed attempt to intimidate info out of him, and then wander around Angel Island, looking for Knuckles to do the same thing to him, because he's looking for info on something potentially interesting. Not much of a plot. And the reason I had a lot to talk about was that I had to explain why Sonic was out of character. Not just for the sake of an analysis, but also because some people think he was just like the games in issue 50. When Game Sonic happily killed what he thought was a person in Black Knight. This isn't even a situation where it would look on the surface like he's in character because he's reminding us he likes freedom. Never mind that Game Sonic is never outright chatty about himself. But it should be obvious that it's weird how uncharacteristically selfish Sonic is here for no reason. Classic Sonic's attitude didn't translate to not wanting to do good for its own sake. Otherwise, he wouldn't have destroyed a single badnik in Sonic 1 without Tails to humor him. He wouldn't have even beaten that game. Why would he have even gone through Marble Zone in Sonic 1 if he was always like this? And people like to defend IDW Sonic by telling you to take him as his own separate character. And I do. But then it's inconsistent when they say they like him because he's being like Game Sonic. That comes off like people will say anything to make the comic look better just for that. And will always like Sonic in it. These are two panels with nothing to do with the plot. It's just in the summary because the only interesting thing about the story was that, because it was entirely uncreative. I was okay with the experience of most of the story. At no point did it actually frustrate me. At the same time, it was boring looking back on it. The only reason I was invested was because I wanted to see where the story focusing on Fang would go. He does nothing but walk around, wanting to get a jewel. If it weren't for the exact thing he's looking for, this would be the most disappointingly uncreative idea for his miniseries. Why even have one at all then? I already knew he usually looked for jewels. What else does he do? That's not very exciting. I come to a new story to see a new story. All I got was new dialogue that isn't anything special.